I would do another video blog because it takes me far less time to sit here and talk to the camera and make it through my list of thoughts than it does to sit down and write, because that typically takes me hours. And mostly because I like to be really thorough and I like to be very sure of what I'm saying, because I typically say what I mean and mean what I say. And I also typically have a lot of deep thoughts. However, um, it's been a busy week and I just didn't feel like doing that this week. So I have a bunch of notes to try to keep me on track, and we will see if I can get through this in about 15 minutes. So my subject today is how important is someone's looks versus how interesting they are to you versus chemistry that you may have with someone who maybe doesn't fit your type, versus the type of person you see yourself with. Um, and I will just use myself as an example. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I have a type, and I've had this type since I was a little girl, and especially from the time I was about 12 or 13, I've had this type, and it's refined itself over the years and through all of my time dating and meeting and getting to know people and figuring out what really does it for me. And um, so, if we're talking just about looks, I'm talking about someone who's tall. I'm not I'm not really tall. I'm 5'7". So you have to be taller than I am, because if you're my height, I just think you're short. If I can look over your head and you're in my bare feet, then I feel like an Amazon, and I don't want to feel like an Amazon when I'm with a man. So they should be tall, typically dark haired, but that's here nor there. It doesn't really matter. But if I could just pick someone out of a crowd that I would find attractive, they're tall, dark haired, typically wearing glasses, very athletic looking, or at least in shape, and stylish in their own way. That could be lots of different things. As far as character or personality traits that hold my attention, number one is intelligence. So, and I like geeky guys. So, how I wrote in my OkCupid profile was I was looking for an athletic alpha geek. And that is the perfect term for someone who would hold my attention, or get my attention. And they should also typically be a gentleman, a little bit of sophistication. They should also be chivalrous, and they should just be a gentleman, um, because all of those things combined seem like the perfect package for me. And they should be ambitious, um, and if they're successful, great, but they should be ambitious. But that's where the geeky part comes in and the alpha part comes in. So I'm very alpha, and I am not looking to be the alpha person in my relationship, but I'm not going to be less alpha to make someone feel more like a man. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm getting off track here, but that's what does it for me. In all of my dating adventures, I would sometimes um, meet men who were only what I would call moderately interesting, and people that weren't necessarily my physical type. But I tried to have great perspective. Like, this person may not be all of those things. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, this person may be a 7 based on my personal standards. But maybe they have some great traits that would make them far more attractive to me. Um, so, like, the one thing I really couldn't get past, if someone just didn't take care of themselves. And that's not really a size thing, it's more of um, you're not going to be able to keep up with me if you don't get some exercise on a regular basis. And I'll just leave it at that. So I said yes to dates on occasion, for men who were just not quite what did it for me, because I felt like you just never know. You may meet someone who is that person for you, and they just may be in a little different package than you may see yourself with. Um, and I tried that a handful of times, and it just didn't work for me. Oh, this is Abby. So she'll probably be back and forth in the in view of the camera. So it just didn't work for me. And it's not because I felt like I needed to be with a certain type of man, because if they had all the qualities of being an athletic alpha geek and they were chivalrous and sophisticated, they didn't have to necessarily look a certain way, other than they needed to be an active person. So, and I did that many times um, over the years of dating. So, and it just really just didn't work that well for me. And um, I just realized I have a very strong physical type that does it for me. And they have to have all the other qualities as well. So I've run into people who tell me they don't have a type. And that's so amazing to me. Like, I almost can't quite fathom it. Like, someone I dated like 3 years ago who, like, was the most amazing person I had met at that point. He didn't have a type. And he really didn't. And so, as far physically, he did not have a type. But for all the other qualities, he did have a type. And I was kind of both of those things. So, because he thought I was very sexy and really hot and interesting and all those things, which was cool. But still, sometimes I just can't quite fathom not having a type. Like, some men really are only attracted to blondes. Some women are really only attracted to dark haired dudes with long hair. I mean, who's to say? We each have our type, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, However, in dating land, sometimes you take advantage of opportunities, is how I will put this. Is you're out to, and I'm just going to really use men as the example, and I'm sorry, I'm not sexist, and I don't think men are pigs or chivalrous, and the light just went off, so here I am in slight darkness. Hold on. Okay. Ta-da! Um, so, so I don't mean to be bashing men, but as a woman, I've had this experience with men, and so have most of my girlfriends. And I will maybe bring up some experiences some of my guy friends have had. But in dating, especially dating in this millennium, there's a lot of getting what you want really easily. Um, and to not put too fine a point on it, basically finding someone that you want to get naked with or is willing to get naked with you, and won't make it too difficult for that to happen. And there's so much of that good old fashioned dating has kind of gone out the window. So there's a lot of like faux type relationships in dating land. Like, you're seeing someone, but you're not in a relationship with them, and you want to make sure that they know that you guys aren't dating, but you guys are seeing each other and hooking up. There's a lot of that. So that can be really confusing. And especially for women. It's not that confusing for men, but sometimes men will meet someone who's really amazing, really isn't their physical type, but they have a certain amount of chemistry and things in common with, and they're having a great time with them. And that can be sometimes difficult for men who think that they're only attracted to a certain type, or they have a type that they see themselves with, that they deserve a certain type of woman because of their status or how they look, or because they're a nice guy. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to roll my eyes. And I love nice guys. Like, the nicer you are, the better I will like you. But there's a difference between being a nice person and being a nice guy who treats people a certain way in order to get a certain result. That's not a nice guy. That's manipulative. So, and sometimes we all do it, you know. Um, so I have to say, in all of my dating adventures, I've been incredibly lucky. I don't know why that is, but I have been really, really lucky. For the most part, the men that I am attracted to typically find me very interesting, and are attracted to me as well. I think part of that has to do with my attitude, um, and you know how I look. Um, but I just think it's a combination of things, that what I'm attracted to and what they're attracted to, it all works together. That really didn't make a lot of sense. But I'm not going to edit all this. I'm just going with what's in my head. So there is the other part of dating, as opposed to the sort of seeing each other but hooking up culture, versus your type and who you attract. So you can have a type and not necessarily be able to attract those people. And I see that a lot, with my friends, my girlfriends especially. Like, oh, I want a guy who's this, and this, but I keep finding this guy. Well, somehow your picker is not, it needs recalibration. Like, if you keep having the same experience, the problem is you, not the other person. So you have to up your standards, or um, realize sometimes that maybe you're only able to attract a certain type of person. And there are a lot of factors that go into that, and I don't really want to go into those. And a lot of times that's just the physical. Um, and I know lots of beautiful ladies and lots of really attractive men who cannot find someone who's worth spending time with or dating for what I would consider dating. Um, and I don't know why that is. Personality conflicts. Um, so one of my girlfriends told me a couple years ago, because I was like bitching on Facebook about some idiot, because sometimes people seem interesting and then they turn out to be idiots, and there's a lot of that. Um, but that's part of the process, and I have some really great stories. But um, she came up to me. She goes, I she said to me, I had to laugh at your latest story because you seem to have this magical dating life. And I was like, well, I kind of do, but it's not because I'm doing anything crazy or anything like that. I just, luckily, again, I happen to be able to attract the type of person that I'm attracted to. So thank you, universe. I've kind of always had that luck. And I feel bad for people who don't have that kind of luck. But maybe that's just because my focus is pretty dead on. Like, I know what does it for me. And even if I kind of go off track, like I said earlier, um, I don't stay on that track. I go back to um, searching for the type of person that would not only get my attention, but hold my attention, and someone that I could have a relationship with and build a life with. Anyway, we all have our goals and how we go about that. Like I said, I've been incredibly lucky. I can't really explain it, but thank you, universe, again for the blessings. Um, so I read this article a while back, and I'm going to read the question in the article. And if you're not familiar with the Good Men Project, you definitely need to go read this website pretty often. It's almost like the Huffington Post for men, but I think women can learn a lot from this website as well. Or it works for me. But maybe just because I tend to approach dating and relationships more like a man than like a woman. So even though I am typically a badass yet a tender-hearted girl at the same time. So, um, so this guy sent in a question to whatever this dating guy and said, I dated a terrific girl for 9 months, but to be honest, I was never sure how attracted I was to her. Now, this is the kicker. Despite the fact that we had a healthy sex life while we were together, I feel like I'm being superficial by letting this one thing hold me back from an all around fantastic woman. Looks fade, and I realize her personality is way more important than how she looks on the outside. But I just can't seem to get over the fact that I didn't find her extremely attractive. So that's the other kicker word for me, extremely. So this guy feels like he deserves to have all of those things that this woman is, but in an extremely attractive package. And even though the sex life was great, he realizes he's superficial. And he is being very superficial. I tend to be somewhat superficial as well, but I'm not stupid. So if I found someone who had all of those qualities and were only like a 7 out of a 10 based on pure physical attraction, would I give them up because I felt like I really needed to be like turned on to 1,000% every time I looked at them? And I don't know how else to put that, but like many things cause a person to be attractive. Some people are extremely attractive. Some people are average attractive. But he didn't find her unattractive. He just didn't find her extremely attractive. And so while physical compatibility is a very huge thing, because let's face it, money and sex typically are the reason why relationships fail. That may not be the beginning of why relationships fail, but over time, if you start having problems with your partner and the intimacy goes away, then it basically comes down to sex as why you don't stay together or don't want to continue to stay with them. But physical compatibility is very important, and physical and sexual compatibility. But again, this guy says he didn't find her extremely attractive. And one of my girlfriends dated this guy for a year and a half who really had a completely different physical type he was attracted to compared to what she looks like. But this guy was a big old man hoe. I mean, I don't really have a lot of nice things to say about this person, but this guy basically would have sex with anyone who would have sex with him. Like his whole mission in life, other than working, was finding someone else he could get naked with. And I'm being polite there. And he was really blatant about checking other women out when they were together and when he wasn't together either, because he was also on Tinder, Craigslist, all these other things when he was supposedly faithful to my girlfriend. And so all of these women that weren't like did not even remotely look like her, was what he just could not, like, he just was blatant about checking them out. And I don't know about you, but if I was with someone who did that sort of thing and I could realize what caught their eye and how I look were two completely different things, I wouldn't be able to date them. I would have to go. I would just have to be like, I'm not what does it for you, regardless of all the other things. And overall, my own sense of self worth is more important to me than trying to get or keep your attention. Because if that's what gets your attention, you should go have it. Because obviously, I'm not doing it for you. And that was horrible for her self esteem. So, um, and um, a few years back when I was dating, I have two similar-ish stories. One was a guy who was a musician, and he just thought he was like just so completely irresistible, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, go take a number next to all the other really tall, handsome, interesting, successful, can't even say the word, successful dudes that I'm seeing or getting to know or have met, and that sort of thing. And he said to me, like on our second date, he goes, well, I've never been into a BBW before, but I'd be willing to give you a chance. And he kept saying, wouldn't you want to be a rock star's girlfriend? And I'm just like, well, you're not a rock star, and I'm not a BBW. So apparently, the fact that I was not a 2 or a 4 or a 6 in size made me a BBW. I thought that was pretty hilarious. So um, obviously, I just went and got naked with him and just showed him how it was done. That's not true. That didn't happen. But I thought about it just to teach him a lesson. But, sometimes I take the higher road. And then another guy I was dating, and we should not have been dating based on the circumstances of each of our lives when we met. We should not have been dating. But we met, we had a lot of chemistry, a lot of great things in common, and we just thought each other were really cool. And we had been dating for about a month, and we met for dinner, and he was just like, I don't know where it came out of the conversation. I don't remember the prior conversation. Um, we were probably having the conversation about, are you still dating other people? I'm still dating other people, because I had that conversation a lot when I was dating, because I just wanted to make sure that nobody thought I was exclusive with them if I wasn't. And I wanted to be sure if I was trying to be exclusive with someone and they weren't interested in being exclusive, that we just didn't have those kind of um, weird interactions, that we were very honest with where we were at and the direction we were going. And this person said to me, well, I've only ever been attracted to really skinny girls. Well, I'm not a really skinny girl. I used to be. And then I weighed 300 pounds. And now I don't weigh 300 pounds. And I'm pretty athletic, but I'm also very curvy at the same time. So I'm not a really skinny girl. Don't really plan on being a really skinny person because I don't care. I typically like how I look. Um, and I was just like, I'm not sure why you're telling me this, because you don't seem to be thinking of really skinny girls when your dick is inside me. And I'm sorry, that's kind of crude, but that's what I told him. I also mentioned that I'm attracted to guys who are 6'4", and he's only 5'10", but wasn't really an issue for me as far as height wise. Um, so um, I'm sure I had a point. It'll probably come to me. Oh, so if I'm not someone's physical type, then I can't date them. It's too much for me, because I need to be very, very desired by someone I'm going to be with. Um, and fine if it's a night, fine if it's a couple weeks, if we're just getting to know each other. But if I'm going to be in a relationship with someone, I need to know that that person finds me truly desirable. hopefully I'm also their type. But you can also find someone who's truly hot, sexy, desirable, who maybe isn't your type, but really does it for you. So there are a lot of factors involved in the attraction versus dating versus um, versus like who you who you think your type is and who you think you deserve. Um, and so my girlfriend was texting me the other day about she was dating someone who's a musician and an actor. Um, and she just had to break it off with him because she just wasn't really feeling it, even though on paper they're perfect for each other. And um, she typically is friends with people after she dates them. I'm not that person. If we've dated, you have to go. I'm not interested in maintaining a friendship with you. Maybe a couple of years down the road we can be friendly, but otherwise the relationship just has to be done. But Miley is one of those people. Oh, I'm sorry, I mentioned her name. Sorry. Um, who really is friends with her exes, and it works for her, and I think that's great. I just don't happen to have that personality type. So she's been trying to be friends with this person, and he just is like totally cold and aloof, and um, she just doesn't quite understand why that's happening. And I mentioned to her that, well, he's a performer, and he is this certain type of actor slash musician, and he has a very he's very much into a certain scene, and so is she. And so, like I said, on paper, they seem perfect for each other. Um, and I mentioned to her that maybe he dated you because you really are his type. You are the type of person with the looks, the personality, and all the hobbies and interests that are similar to his, and therefore you enhance his brand. And so, since you guys aren't dating, he doesn't necessarily see the point of being friends with you, because he needs to find another woman who will enhance his brand. And I can say that with a fair amount of certainty because I know the person he was interested in prior to her, and they may have dated for a short while. But again, she was the type of woman based on his um, style, and he does have a certain um, style, presence, that sort of thing, that would enhance his persona. That's the word I'm looking for. And I think that um, for people who are in the public eye, that's sort of what they look for in a way. Some people don't, and that's great. But based on what she was telling me, he really was kind of looking for a groupie, someone to kind of worship him, um, to be his like number one fangirl, and be very public about it. And that's just not her style. I happen to be dating a musician. That's not really my style either. But then again, I have my own persona, and I have my own, how do I put it? I also tend to not have trouble attracting attention. Not because I'm trying to, it just happens. Um, so I needed to make sure when he and I first met that he was not looking for someone who is a groupie, and um, who would be a very colorful addition to his world publicly. You know what I mean? Because I love to go see him perform, but I kind of like to stay in the background. Like, it's obvious we're together, but I'm not looking for any type of attention or try to take any kind of attention away from him. Um, so that was very interesting for her to hear me say that, oh, well, maybe that was a reason he was interested in me, because I enhanced his brand. Um, and I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And so the other thing that we were talking about was that, there are just a certain amount of men who might find you really interesting and you have a lot of compatibility, but they make it seem like as if you should be grateful that they're giving you their time and attention. Like it's a privilege. Um, and granted, I gotta say, I'm sometimes guilty of that. Not because I'm doing anyone any favors, it's more that I am a busy person and I have a very active social life and I have a lot of people in my world, my chosen family, who I love and adore. And I would rather give them time and attention than trying to um, convince someone that I should, I'm worth their time. Nor should they ever have to try to convince me that they're worth my time. I feel like the compatibility in chemistry should be very easy. It should be very natural. And so like this person, the musician guy and the guy that I dated for about a month, who made it seem like I should be grateful that they were interested in me. It just made me laugh because I'm like, you're one of dozens of the same kind of type of dude. So, how are you going to stand out? And it's not by making me work for it because, again, I'm out of here. And so my girlfriend was like, oh, yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only person alone in that realm where men make me feel like it's a privilege that they should date me. And I was like, nope, that's very true. But she also put, um, I no longer feel alone in the fact that so many guys act like it's a privilege to date them, and beneath that there is a fragile ego, and I run into that many times, which is why I had to put the word alpha in my online dating profile because I like geeks, and please don't be offended by me saying this, but there's a fair amount of geeks that are not necessarily an alpha type personality. And over the years, I just have realized I need an alpha male to balance me out. Otherwise, I will just run them over, and I don't want any of that. That's not fun for me, and it certainly can't be fun for them. Or if it is, I'm not into those type of relationships. So, um, but she also said, I've come to the conclusion of wanting a more realistic bond with someone rather than something. Oh, goodness, I took a screenshot. Let me go to the email. See, this is why I take notes because, anyway, she goes, I'm looking for a more realistic bond with someone rather than something primarily fantastical. And I'm into the fantastical part. That's fun and interesting, but in the long run, how is that going to hold two people together? Um, Physical attraction, looks fade. So when you are dating and you meet someone who's really interesting, you still find them attractive, but you don't find them, I'll go back to that article and use that guy's words, extremely attractive. How do you deal with that? Is that a big deal for you? It's not necessarily a huge deal for me. Um, I figure if I find this person attractive, even if I only think they have beautiful eyes or they have great shoulders or, um, a great smile to go along with all the other characteristics and personality traits that will hold my attention and I think are interesting, um, that's plenty for me. But in this hookup culture that is Dateland these days, um, you do find a lot of people are looking for a trophy. Um, and they're going to keep hooking up and meeting people and playing around, but not really dating and getting to know people. Um, Let me back up there. Because they're not really dating, they're faux dating. They're having faux relationships until they find that magical unicorn. And that's the word that a lot of people use these days. They find that unicorn. So while, you know, like you may have found someone who's 80 to 90% of what does it for you, but you want that other 10%. Well, I'm here to tell you that that 10% is worth fudging on a little bit. Um, and if that is really such a big deal that you have that extra 10%, then you need to be honest with yourself. You need to be honest with people you might be hooking up with or casually dating. Um, and I just lost my train of thought because of the cat. So don't waste people's time. Don't waste your time. So if you have an absolute standard that can also be a deal breaker, then you need to focus your attention on that. However, if you have an absolute standard that is also a deal breaker, but you are not able to attract a 10, so to speak, and my next blog will be about the grand attractiveness scale of 1 to 10, then at some point you have to come to terms with sometimes life can send you the most magical people, even if they're not 100% of what you're looking for or what you want. And there's a whole lot to be said for getting your needs met, um, even if the person you're with doesn't look like they stepped off the pages of GQ or is a supermodel. Um, I will say again, I've been extremely lucky, and my partner, I felt like I weird scienced him because he is all of the big things and all of the little things that really do it for me. All of the stuff that I absolutely needed and wanted, and all the other little things that I hoped that would come along with that package. And I hope that everyone finds a person like that at some point in their life. I've been really lucky to have found that now 3 times. Um, and I do feel like the universe sends people our way. People we need at the time, or um, people we weren't sure we needed until after the fact. But have fun out there dating. Just be honest with everyone, and don't don't make it seem like you're more interested in someone if you're not. Again, if you need that like extra 10%, if you need that 100%, if the 90% isn't going to do it for you, or the 95% or 97%, then you need to pass those people by and focus your attention on finding that number, so to speak, that percentage that is going to get your attention, hold your attention, and keep your attention for the long term if that's what you're looking for. Anyway, this went about 18 minutes longer than I planned for it to. I tend to be a storyteller and I tend to be long-winded. And that's even if I have notes, I tend to get off track. I'm always very interested in what you have to say. Hopefully you learned a few things. I don't think anyone really would in this particular blog. But again, my goal is to help people have a better experience in life, one date at a time. So go have fun, go make friends. Hopefully you will find love.